Okay, very warm welcome to everybody this morning. If we can go to the next slide. I'm Alistair McNaught. Sally Betts is working with me, and our colleagues Sarah and Vicky and Dawn are in the background. And if you have particular questions or concerns, do pop them into the text chat pane, and one of us will attempt to respond to you as we go. So the first thing, just a quick overview of what we want to look at. Online learning is an effective way of supporting students when attendance is disrupted, but you need to be effectively implementing it. You need to be doing it with knowledge and awareness of digital accessibility, or you will create unintended barriers. So what we're going to be exploring is some of the modules that will help you reduce your barriers, as well as in the process you begin to see the whole breadth of modules that are available for you and for your teaching staff on becoming digitally competent and working online. So next slide, please. I think most of you have found the chat pane, which if you haven't yet found that, then make sure that you go to the bottom of the Zoom screen and there will be some buttons there. They may not appear magically until your mouse moves over them, but there's a chat pane there. And there's also a participants pane. If you want at any point to raise a hand or something like that, you can go to the participants pane, and then there's some options like raise your hand, yes, no, go slower. We probably won't be doing a huge amount of that because we're tight for time, but it is there and we'd encourage you to use it if you need it. So next slide, please. We are going to give you a brief introduction. Sally's going to play this video, and we hope the bandwidth issues will be fine. So I will stop talking. Sally, have you got your computer audio on as well, Sally?
Welcome to the Enhanced Digital Teaching Platform from the Education and Training Foundation, ETF. ETF's Enhanced Digital Teaching Platform is designed to help develop your teaching and training practice using technology. It gives you free, bite-sized online training modules, and as you complete modules, you can collect digital badges for achievement. As you can see, the platform has a friendly and clear feel with a simple navigation menu. When you scroll down, you can see rows of training modules in sliding menus, the most popular first, then new and updated modules. Once you have registered, you will see a third slider that will be personalized to you. The Enhanced Digital Teaching Platform is adaptive and responsive, which means that the layout will flow and adapt to whatever screen you are using. Let's look at the training modules in a bit more detail. You'll see that each module is related to a category and has a star rating. As you scan the modules, you can add them to your wish list. When you click on a module, you can find the aims and objectives. Each module is 5 to 6 minutes in length and includes an intro, a video or animation, a learning activity, a reflection, a summary, further resources. Each module also has a color code which appears in a thin line below the icon image. The color coding relates to 3 stages of personal development which the modules are organized around. Now let's explore the navigation menu at the top. Firstly, My Learning. This shows the modules that you have completed or that are in progress, and the digital badges that you have earned or partially completed. Badges are awarded for each of the 3 stages: exploring, adopting, and leading. They are portable, and you can use them on your CV or LinkedIn profile. Then, categories. Modules are clustered together into topics, and this submenu shows the topic headings that modules are grouped under. You can see more information about the service in the More section, including more information about modules and badges, and a Frequently Asked Questions section. The toggle allows you to adjust the background theme on the site as indicated. Lastly, there is Login, and finally Sign Up. You do not have to sign in to use Enhance, but registering for an account will enable you to save and track your progress, collect digital badges, and enjoy a more personalized experience. It's as easy as that. We look forward to welcoming you to ETF's Enhance digital teaching platform.
Thank you very much, Sally. Now, to put this in context then, and we said that we're going to have a bit of a focus today on the accessibility and inclusion bit, because if you put things online and 10% of your learners can't access them, that has not been an effective online move. So we're going to be focusing on the part of the framework, accessibility and inclusion, but on the screen here you can see that there's a whole series of different elements, from planning teaching, approaches to teaching, all the way through to accessibility and inclusion assessment, etc. So well worth you exploring those at your leisure, and some of you may be locked down and have a bit of leisure that you didn't expect. So next slide, please. Okay, let's have some context to what we mean by digital accessibility. And to start with, I just want to say, forget about disability. Taking accessibility to mean my disabled students is just far, far too narrow a sense of what accessibility is really about. Digital accessibility is for everyone. It's the ability to access your digital content easily. Everyone benefits from that. To navigate it effectively, everyone benefits. To consume it comfortably, to be able to personalize it as you need to, everybody benefits. And to act on it and respond to it seamlessly, to not have kind of clunky systems that are tricky to work through. So digital accessibility will definitely support students with, you know, your ADHD, your dyslexia, students with visual impairment, deaf, all the rest of it, but it actually benefits everybody as well. That's why it's so important that when you begin to look at online courses and online materials, this is something that's almost a hygiene factor, that you just think about it automatically. You wouldn't dream of excluding people. So next slide then, let's just work through those. I've said that there's those 4 elements: access digital content easily, for example. And on that one, some of the key points here is that it's to do not just with the system choices, the tool choices, it's also to do with the teacher choices, the academic, the tutor. So when you're thinking about creating your online courses, putting things online, do think about the systems, the tools that you're using. Don't choose something if it requires really complex login procedures, passwords, etc., that have to have 17 letters, 4 numbers and 13 bits of punctuation. That kind of thing doesn't help for students with dyslexia and so on. Make sure that the system you're working with, really try to check it, not just with a mouse, but also have a go at checking it with a keyboard, and try to choose platforms and systems that are going to work on smartphones if possible, as well as working on laptops, etc. But your teacher choices are really important. So make sure you're not just scanning a photocopy as a picture and putting it online. Make sure what goes online is editable text. That's very important if people need screen reader users or if people need text to speech. Make sure that key points are described in audio or video. If there's a YouTube video and it's kind of 50 minutes long and there's no captions with it, at least make sure that you put some notes alongside it. The key points in this are X, Y, Z. Make sure instructions are clear and unambiguous. So that's that part of making sure they can access digital content easily. So the next slide is make sure they can navigate it effectively. So again, some of that is system related, tool related. Make sure the way if you're working on Moodle, the way you design your course structure is logical, simple as possible, that you don't end up going down lots and lots of alleys to get somewhere and then getting lost. Again, make sure that if you're using a platform to navigate through, that you're not choosing a particular template design where it's all kind of really smart carousel and you click here and to move forward and click here to move back, but it actually doesn't work unless you can use a mouse. So again, think of those things. Those are fundamentals for some people. Teacher choices, navigation, you can make a huge difference if you're creating documents for students just by making sure you don't use italic, bold, 16 point in order to highlight a heading. Instead, use heading 1. Highlight the text and click on H1, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. Use the inbuilt styles. That's fantastically important at allowing people to instantly navigate using things like the navigation pane in Word, or if it's a web page, there are browser tools that will help you to instantly go to any point in the document just by pulling you up the headings that you've put in. Make sure your hyperlinks don't say click here, click here, click here. If they have meaningful text, they are easier for everybody who's skimming the content to not just see a click here and then have to read back a sentence to see why they might need to click here. If the text is on the need and the important bit, that's really helpful. And for somebody who's blind, they pull together a list of all the hyperlinks on the page to work out which one they want to go to. And if they all say click here, click here, click here, they have no idea. Again, clear, unambiguous instructions help you to navigate through a task. So next slide. Consuming comfortably. So sometimes online you're looking at something and you think, I just wish I could magnify that a bit or change the colors. So make sure that when you're choosing a system, a tool, a quiz system to use with your students, a collaborative system to use with your students, try to ensure that the colors and contrasts can be tweaked. Try to make sure that you're using resources that can be magnified without left-right scrolling. And then in terms of teacher choices, when you're putting material together, try to make sure that you've got clear, readable fonts. Try to use sans serif fonts for online work. Or write in plain English. Make sure there's good color contrasts. Differentiation is fantastic. In the class, you can do it by questioning. You can do it in various ways by conversation. You can say, oh, why don't you have a look at, if you're struggling with that a bit, go back in the book 3 pages and just reread that item in the text box. You can do that in class. Online, you can't. So online, think about the way you can differentiate using hyperlinks or tabs, so that here's a kind of intro, here's the basics, but this is for the more advanced. And then the range of media. Make sure that when you're putting things online, one of the fantastic things online is there are no printing costs. So don't feel that, I can only do something that's 2 pages long. Why not put in 3 extra images, photographs, video clips, etc. So avoid the text monoculture that often is a byproduct of handouts in a classroom. This is a real opportunity to do something really different. And the next slide. The way students respond to the stimulus that you've given them, the kind of the way they act on it, the way they demonstrate their learning. Okay, well, think again at system level, tool level. Think about the kinds of activities you could do, the quizzes that you could do, the collaborative tools you could use, so that there's peer learning going on. Again, this is a fantastic opportunity, but make sure that those quizzes, those tools, etc., as much as possible, try to check, can I magnify it? Will it work without a mouse? So have a think about those things when you're doing them. And think of alternative assessments and media. So this is a chance again to say, well, maybe if my students are consuming some of my content on their mobile phones now because they're working from home, well, maybe they could actually respond not just by an essay, but perhaps they could do a quick video clip and upload it to YouTube or do a podcast. So there are alternative things that you can think of for them to act and respond seamlessly. And your choices are really important there. Again, make sure that if you're giving them text that they're then acting on in some way, that they can select it, so that they can copy and paste bits of it into their answer instead of having to memorize it, think about spellings, worry about things like that. And then the range of tasks and media, think about how you could play to different skills with the students. And finally, make sure that there's plenty of reflection and self-assessment opportunities for students to be able to really embed their learning. And for the next slide, and this is where I will dip out after this slide because I've got another event I'm going to very shortly, to look at the accessibility modules, and Sally's going to take you through one specific module later, but we've got a whole range of accessibility related modules. So what I've done on the screen here is I've highlighted with a red box that goes around the title the ones that we think are going to be most relevant to you at this time. So modules like Bring Your Own Device, Creating Inclusive Content, the principles, that's a really good one to start with. The benefits of text-to-speech, that's something many of your students may not be particularly familiar with. If they are already getting disability support, then they may do, but there's lots of students that would benefit, not least students from a different language background. Supporting special needs, an introduction to assistive technology, so you can have a sense as to how people will consume your digital content if they are an assistive technology. And then the practice of creating inclusive content, so we've got the principles as well as the practice. Equitable access to digital technology could be relevant when some of your students may have, you know, 3 iPads and a laptop at home, and others have got just a smartphone. And then accessibility in the law, because that's a context to this. It's not just we're going online because online's going to help us in the coronavirus. There's also this sense that going online is now part of the legislation now that applies to all FE colleges, all universities, all public sector bodies, that when you have content online, it really needs to be accessible so that you're not cutting out some students that would need it. So that's my brief overview there. I'll hang around for a few minutes before my next session, but I'll be disappearing shortly. If there are any specific questions, pop them in there quickly. You've got 3 minutes before Sally has to take over. And if not, we go straight on with Sally.
Thank you, Alistair. If you pop your questions into the chat pane, I'll just wait a couple of minutes before I start, just in case you've got any specific questions about what Alistair has covered. Okay, I can't see any questions coming through. So I'm going to carry on because we have still got quite a lot to get through in this webinar. Thank you, Alistair. Alongside the accessibility modules, there are also dealing with difference and diversity modules so that we cover inclusion. And again, I've done as Alistair, I've highlighted those that we at this time think will support you in supporting your students online. And obviously thinking about different digital skills of your learner groups, skills within their vocational or subject areas certainly, but they will have different digital skills levels as well. So the tools you use need to take that into account. Thinking about personalised learning pathways, on this side, thinking about different ways that you can deliver learning to meet the needs of learners. I can see messages now coming in, so I'm just going to halt a second and check to make sure that Alistair can pop back in and answer them if needed. And I'll just unmute Alistair, or if Sarah could unmute him. Or... There you go. I think I've unmuted you, Alistair.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Yes, okay, so many people have wanted me to have a mute button for years. I'm not Santhanayake. Apologies if I haven't pronounced that properly. Could you just explain a little bit more? Do the worksheets. Are you asking about worksheets needing to be accessible? So I'll assume that that's what you are, and if I'm misinterpreting, then just type something in the text chat pane. But if you're creating worksheets, the best way of doing it is to initially create them in a Word document. Ideally, you could then, if you've got a Moodle platform or a Blackboard or any of those like that, then actually probably the most accessible thing of all is to create it within the platform, because that will then render as HTML, a web format, which is much more accessible to all sorts of devices. But otherwise, online Word documents, if you've got Office 365, they can be very accessible, and they come with the inbuilt learning tools. PDFs are probably the less favored, particularly if you have Office 365 and you can have online Word. I'll let you carry on now, Sally.
Thank you, Alistair. Okay, so as I was saying, on the dealing with difference and diversity modules, we also have highlighted some thinking about the pathways through your learning materials is going to be important. So if you're using virtual learning environments such as Moodle, you might want to use conditional statements, for example, to guide learners through a specific route. You might want them to watch a video, do a quiz, then depending on the score of their quiz, you could either ask them to meet you for a tutorial in a room like this because they're obviously struggling with something, or you could send them off to do the next part of the learning. We're obviously in a time when all your students have disruptive attendance, but the resolving intermittent and disruptive attendance is all about tracking learning. And if you're supporting learners online, then you do need to think about how you can track what they've done and how they're doing through their learning. And that might be using tools like quizzes so that you can see that they've done the quiz. It might be by having discussion forums, chat rooms, holding tutorials. So a bit like flipped learning, learning from home and then coming together to discuss what you've learned. And the coming together can happen in rooms like this, in Skype, in Teams, in Google Hangouts. Obviously, we're talking about effective learning, and Alistair has been talking about how you adapt and change content and make sure that it is accessible. And the learning materials have got ideas and links on how to do that. And we'll come to that in a minute. I also want to think about overcoming language barriers. If we've got ESOL students, English for Speakers of Other Languages students, or we've got students with hearing impairments, then there are things that you might need to think about. Actually, overcoming barriers, whether it's for learners with ESOL learners with dyslexia, hearing impaired learners, sometimes learning online can actually be an advantage because they can do it at their own time and they can use tools to support them. So instead of listening to the content as you are now, they can listen over and over again. They can think about that content. They can use tools that are online. So in the Overcoming Language Barriers, to help learners where English isn't their first language, it gives links to tools like Google Translate that they could use to help them. For hearing impairment, if you're going to start using tools like this, I just want to demonstrate something. At the moment, I'm in a room with 46 of you in here with us. It's on my own home internet connection, but you can't see me. So if you are hearing impaired and you are relying on lip reading and following me like that, you would be missing content. Not all your learners will have disclosed that they do have a hearing impairment, especially if you're teaching an adult and community learning, perhaps with older learners. So I'm going to start my video so that you can see me on the video. You can see that I'm obviously at home, but what I have tried to ensure is that you have a clear view of my face, that you can see me, that my face is well lit, that my camera is not pointing at the top of my head, from my chin upwards, and that what's in the background is also relatively clear and not cluttered. I have seen some interesting backgrounds, let's put it like that, when I've been on other people's webinars. So because we've got so many people in here, and because it is on my home internet, I'm going to stop my video because that does take bandwidth up. However, if I was dealing with a group of 16 to 25 students at home, I would have no problem with having my video on, and I would have no problem with having everybody so that they could put their video on and unmute when they want to speak. So that's the dealing with difference and diversity modules. Now, how do we find the modules? You saw very briefly in the video at the start of the session, the enhanced digital teaching platform, and it did give a very quick demo of where those modules were. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to take you to the website, and I'm actually going to show you through one of those modules. But how to find them, and a quick way to find the accessibility and dealing with the difference and diversity modules, is by using the categories link on the top of the site. So I'm going to take you there now, and I'm actually going to show you this one, which is creating inclusive content principles, and it's at an exploring level, so it's just making you aware of things, but it's a great one to start with because it gives you clear tips on making your resources clear and short. So let me just take you through to that. So although I'm sharing my screen now, I'm just going to change my screen to show you this website. So you should now all be looking at the Enhanced Digital Teaching Platform. And this is what it looks like. Now, I've already registered on this site, so you can see that I've logged in. But what we are suggesting and recommending to you is that you actually do register for the site. Although you can access the content without registering, if you register, it will track your content, and you will have the ability to evidence your content by earning badges, which I'll come to in a minute. So when you come to the site, it will give you the option to sign in or to register. So please do register, it's free to register. To see where I am with my learning, I can select the My Learning tab. I can see which modules I'm progressing in. I can see if I'm taking any badges and what my next badges are. And I might be delivering the Essential Digital Skills Programme. So I might take the self-assessment for that and actually look at those professional development resources as well. So that's My Learning, but the route we suggested for you was to go via categories. And when you go to categories, because this site hosts two different things, the EdTech, which is what we're talking about today, and the Essential Digital Skills Programme, that's the first thing you'll see a choice. Select the down arrow to see the full menu of resources, and you've got a lot of options, including virtual learning environments if you are teaching in a college and you know that you need to deliver resources via that. But please take a look at the accessibility and the inclusion modules, the dealing with difference and diversity modules, before you start to help you create resources that are accessible for all your learners. So I'm going into accessibility. Once I go into accessibility, you can see that I get a whole choice of different resources, as you saw listed previously, and they're color-coded. So they're color-coded into the stages or levels. So we've got exploring, we've got adopting, and we've got leading. And I'm recommending that if you're completely sort of nervous about digital skills, you might want to start with the exploring ones, but you can do these in any order at all. So don't think that you can't, you can. It also tells you where you are through the resources. So you can see I've actually completed this one before, but I'm still going in because I want to show you it. So a quick tour. So I go into it, I click on the initial link, and I get to see the aims, the objectives, and where it fits into that professional framework that Alistair showed you earlier. And it tells you what badge you could earn by completing this and a series of others. I'll come to that. So once you've checked this is the one you want to do, you launch it. Yours will say launch, mine says relaunch because I've been here before. Once in, you get a quick overview. You get a very short video. I'm starting this video, but I'm not going to play it the whole way through. I just want to make a point. So I'm starting the video, and I'm going to stop it. You can see that this video is only 2 minutes and 40 seconds long. It is a short overview, introduction, and it also gives an idea of things you could do in practice, in your practice. You can watch it on YouTube, and it does come with closed captions. So you can watch it with the closed captions for accessibility purposes. Also for accessibility purposes, you can download a transcript. And I know some people would rather actually, their preferred method of learning would be to read that transcript as opposed to watch the video. So that's an alternative route through these training materials. Each and every one of the modules then has a activity, the activity to reinforce learning, to make you think a little bit more about it, or to give you ideas. So this activity is a drag and drop. It reminds you of the principles that are outlined in the video, and then there's a drag and drop. I have no idea which order these go in because I wasn't, I've done it already. So what I need to do, I can, right at the bottom, I can just reset my module. Just reset it, and then I can do that activity again. So just stick these in anywhere. I'm dragging and dropping them into the right order. Once I've done that, I can submit that and see some feedback, or see if I need to try again. A bit of a fluke, I've got them right, thankfully. So I read my feedback, I take in what it says there. There's another activity on this one, which is to give you some ideas. So some ideas on creating inclusive content, things about changing format of your resources, adding sound, adding images, adding video, adding some self-assessment, and where you might store that resource. All right. So I've undertaken that. I've got some more ideas. As I've been going through that, I might have come up with lots of things like, oh, I need to remember that. Built into these resources is a notes section. So you can also highlight the notes areas, things that you want to remember. So I want to remember those 6 principles, and I've set aside, half an hour. I'm actually going to do 3 of these modules today. So I saved my 6 principles. I also might have gone down a bit further and looked at the further resources area where you'll find one of Alistair's, for example. I might think, oh, I'm going to take a look at that later on. I haven't got time to do it now. I'll just copy it. I'll paste it into my notes page. You'll also find down in the further resources, and these are really useful because they take what you've learnt in the module video and in the activities, and then they support you then to put them into practice. They give you further resources, further information. So this is a module that Alistair's created, an online learning module, to look more at inclusive digital practice. Or you can watch a webinar about it, or you can find advice on the JISC site, or you can find specific advice. And this one's important, for example, writing effective alternative text. It's no good writing, an apple because you've put a picture of an apple. It needs to say, why is that learner looking at it? Even more important, if you've taken an image of a chart, what is that chart actually telling a learner? That's what the alt text is for. And likewise, Alistair mentioned videos earlier. When you're doing the closed captions for videos, if you're actually demonstrating a process and you're not doing a voiceover, you need to write in closed brackets in the closed captions what is actually occurring for those people that may be visually impaired. Anyway, once you've done your notes, you can save your notes. I've now saved my notes. And where do I find my notes? How do I do anything with them? Well, in the top left-hand corner of all the modules, there are the resources linked to this site that you can download. So the transcripts, the summaries, etc. you can download from there. But you can also download your notes by clicking on the downloads. I can give it a name. My suggestion for the name would be to take the title here and make that your name and copy and paste it into here. And then I can simply download it, and you'll find it downloads as a PDF with exactly what you've put in that notes box. And this is useful for your own reminders of things that you need to follow up, or ideas you can take forward, or things that you might want to share with colleagues. It's also useful if you do want to take the badge route. Once you've downloaded your notes, you can go back to the summary page. And one thing you do need to do to tell the system that you've completed and that you've finished is just remind yourself, and we do this with learners, we recap, remind yourself to go back through the resources. So a little recap of key points. Here we go, 3 key points on this one. When I hit the 3rd key point, because I've been here before, it hasn't come up, but a little message comes up to now tell you to click on this feedback button. And that's so you've just done this module. Give us a bit of feedback about it. Tell us some thoughts. Share some thoughts of useful bits for the wider community. So you click on the feedback button and you can rate the module, and you can type in a comment, leave a comment so that other practitioners can think, oh, you know, that's good. If you find something interesting, like writing that alt text, let the community, the wider community know. So that's just a quick look through one of the modules, but I hope that you've all, or will after the session, be able to go and look at the modules. And please do start with the accessibility, just to make sure that your content is going to meet the needs of all your learners. When we think about our classes, within our classes, we know we'll have learners with dyslexia who may be on the autism spectrum and not really realise it. So it is important, whether you're in the classroom face-to-face or you're supporting learners online. Okay, so I'm going to move on, and I'm going to talk to you about how we evidence our learning, and how you can then apply it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the badges and the way we're doing badging. At the moment, the badges are only available on accessibility and the dealing with difference and diversity modules, and we really appreciate people working towards badges before the 30th of March, because we're in the pilot phase and we want to learn from the pilot phase in order to roll out across the other areas of the Enhanced Digital Teaching Platform. As I said before, you can study them in any order, but to earn badges, the first thing we do is we work on a module. So I've just done creating inclusive content principles, which is in exploring. And to earn my accessibility exploring badge, I will take all of those modules. So the bring your own device, all 6. I won't read them all out. You can see there's 6 modules. That is what we term a cluster of modules. I'm going to work on my next lot of modules. So I'm going to work on the 3 adopting. So that's changing your practice, actually starting to put it in practice. But then I might move on to the leading. So first of all, sort of leading by example because you're adopting practice, but then leading others, helping others to improve their digital skills as well. So I start working on my 3 here in adopting. I take one of them, and then I take the other 2, and once I've completed all 3, I'm automatically awarded a 1-star badge. You get a badge, an accessibility badge at adopting level, and it shows 1 star. I then reflect on what I've learned, and I start to change my practice, or I state in a reflection how I intend to change my practice. I submit my reflection, and I earn a 2-star badge, and suddenly my accessibility badge has 2 stars. I then upload a resource and a reflection to show that I have changed my practice, I've put it into practice, and to show the impact with my learner group or my colleagues, depending on who I've done the resource for, and I earn my adopting 3-star badge. And this works across the different levels or stages, the exploring and the leading stage. The process works in the same way. The only difference between the stages is that at exploring level, where you're starting to learn about these different things, raise your own awareness, you don't get to have to upload a resource. You don't need to show anything at that stage. And I know that some of you might be thinking, but not all of these are applicable to me. So for example, I don't teach anything to do with learning for independent living. But actually, if you go and just work through the materials, there are ideas embedded within them and there are links within them. So for example, in independent living, it talks about teaching a cookery class and setting up little video posts every so often to support learners. You could be doing that on a VLE. So you could be giving information, and as per normal, you might be giving a PowerPoint presentation that you've added some audio to, or some specific notes in the notes section. But then underneath it, for additional support, you could link to a video that you find on YouTube or you make that actually might support those learners more. So there are little nuggets within most of the modules, within the further reading modules, that you could put or transfer into your own settings. Once you take a badge, finding the badge, do you remember I started by showing you the My Learning area? You'll see, if you click on My Learning, that it tells you there are badges you can now earn. It tells you when they're ready for you to earn, and it leads you through those. Okay, so when you go in, just check where you were within My Learning. Have you started something and not been able to finish it? It'll tell you that you've started, but it will only tell you if you've started, if you've actually registered, and you can only do the badges if you've actually registered too. Why reflect? Lots of reasons. For your own personal practice, we all know that you need to reflect to help you take in learning. We know that if you reflect, it helps you to take it helps you to actively monitor your own learning, and it helps you to make changes as a result of that learning, the metacognition. It also helps you to foster a growth mindset. You can do a bit, you can take it further. What have we done to support your reflection? Well, reflections are scaffolded, like you would scaffold learning for your learners. We've scaffolded it with questions. We've also told you an approximate word length to give you an idea of the level of detail that we're looking for. And when you submit a reflection, you will get some supportive feedback from a practitioner who is already adopting that practice and leading the way with others. Okay, so you will get some supportive feedback and you will get some suggestions of things you could try or do. All right, so don't think you're on your own, you've got us, we are a community. And where do these reflections go? For reflections that are purely reflections for your 2-star badges, you have the choice as to whether to make them public or not. We're hoping that you will make them public because, as well as the digital teaching platform or within it, we also have the awarded practice area, which allows you to see what other practitioners are doing. And because you can filter it, you can look at particular curriculum areas, you can find out what other practitioners are doing within your area. And this is very new, so it is building, and we've been placing resources and reflections up there for you to see. So it is something in development, but it will then roll out across the other areas as well. So I know I've just slightly overrun, So to feedback, I'm just going to very quickly remind you of the aims and objectives of today, and I hope you feel we have covered those. I'm also going to show you our contact details. We are recording today's session, so it is available as a recording, and I'm sure we'll be able to also send PowerPoints out to people if required, but you certainly get the recording.